Hey everybody, welcome back to the With Phillip Garcia show. It's been a long hiatus. I'm really happy to be here. It's
Are you?
I am. Do I not seem like it? I've had a long day filled with activities filled with activities that are based around my sponsors. JOKR Designs, everybody, check them out. They're a hell of a glass blowing company based out of Austin, Texas. They're going to blow your mind just like they blow their glass. I'm Phillip Garcia. Not only do I advertise for these guys, I use their products every day, multiple times a day.
I love to hear it, man.
Dude, that sounded like such a real ad read. Sam, I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's not a real thing?
Yeah, no, it is. I actually have, they're really good guys, and they actually gave me pieces and stuff.
I mean, it sounds like a real company. They would name it Joker, J-O-K-R.
Yeah.
Oh, well, good for them.
Last episode, I think, was with them.
Nice.
Yeah, my buddy, God damn it, his last name's like, why is it slipping right now? It's so fucked up of me to forget my sponsor's
Hey, that's okay,
name.
man. You've been hitting the Jokers too hard.
Right. It's because of his damn product.
It's his fault that you don't remember his name.
Right.
The fact it's his fault that he gave you free stuff and you can't remember to thank him properly.
Exactly.
No, you'll get there.
I'm the perfect spokesperson for their product. Yeah, we keep giving all these products away, but they somehow just they're not reading the ads.
It escapes them.
Yeah. Sam Castillo, everybody.
What's going on?
He is our guest today. I'm really happy to be here with you, Sam. I like to give people the cold shoulder when they come in for the podcast.
Yeah.
Because I like to give the illusion of we're bumping into each other like we would out in the wild.
Even though it was pre-planned, we've had to reschedule. This is not even the first attempt to do it.
No, you're right. It's very planned. It's the most planned episode I've ever had of this podcast. I've known Sam now for probably 12 years at least.
At least.
Not like an entire 12 years.
No.
I've known Sam for 6 months probably.
I've known you for about...
We've spent time together.
Well, you've been in Austin for a year.
Yes. But I'm saying composite time.
Composite time.
6 months.
I think 6 months out of 12 years.
Yeah.
Because we met in 2010.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were Lutherans. Are you
still
still
am.
Lutheran? Yeah, I'm still Lutheran. That's weird of us to say that, especially being comedians. It's weird that I wanted to have you on for, first of all, that reason.
Sure.
Small world complex is always fun. 2, last time I went into your apartment, I was like, damn, this motherfucker be reading and shit. You got a lot of books.
I do.
And then 3, you're one of those well-spoken, articulate comments I know as well. So,
thanks, man.
no problem, dude. I only have people on that I want to know more about.
I appreciate it, dude.
Yeah. And other than the fact that you believe in a God that might not be real.
Well, the thing is, there's so many... I've contemplated and questioned my faith so much. I'm not even kidding. Because, but
it's kind of the beauty of the struggle.
Well... Do you believe that the Lutheran God exists?
The Lutheran God? Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Because, I have to clarify it that way now. More and more, I'm starting to clarify it as the sect God. I think that there is a higher power, but I don't know. I think it's all a shared God from every religion. I do believe that there is a God who had a single offspring who came, died, and rose from the dead. It's if there's one thing that I can recommend anyone, it's a documentary. It's free. It's called Zeitgeist. It's by a guy named it's Joseph, or no, maybe it's Ryan Jones. I don't remember his name completely, but he's a documentarian, and it's broken into 3 acts. The first act, the third act is about the concept of how banking is.
It's the Rothschilds, right?
Well, it's one of the main families. It is true. If you ever wants to have a fun read, I'm dead serious. Not even for sarcasm. Look up the Maxwell Rothschild III, and he was the Hungarian banker, and he also went down to Greece. And how they spread out all over the world. This one family. This guy had 4 sons.
What time frame was this? Do you know?
Their rise to power, I believe, began in the 1600s.
Yeah.
This is pre-French Revolution. This is back when people in Europe it is post-Renaissance, but this is still when people believe that, God has ordained certain families to rule over everyone else.
Like divine people.
Divine people, essentially.
I'm happy we turned towards each other because the last comment on the last episode was you're facing the same way, and that creates 90% no eye contact.
Yeah.
This is way better.
I love it.
Yeah. Anyways, sorry, you were saying.
No. So the Rothschilds, it's interesting how this family in the late 1600s has been able to not only continue their lineage. Like you think about the average family, some of them eventually are just gonna die out name-wise because they have only daughters. And then other times, based on the amount of wars and disease we've had, family lines will just end of famine, death, by violence, or just disease. And this is a family that's kept the name lineage and also kept their power in the world and influence through banking. And they now have become like the...
Is it an American institution now? The Rothschild? Or
it's
is it still like Hungarian over there and shit?
So they were French bankers, I believe, that spread all over Prussia, which is essentially Hungary, Central Europe.
Right.
But they are, as far as I know now, the main composite, like a focus, is the United States. Like the five families, so to speak, of banking that began the Federal Reserve Bank, which I always thought that the Federal Reserve was like made by the U.S. government. It is not. It is actually not a governmental institution.
Right. And this
It's
is something a lot of people peg when they start to mention like Zeitgeist area conversation.
Right.
Is the Federal Reserve.
The whole third act of the entire movie is devoted to the Federal Reserve and the IRS and how basically they were all made by private banks on purpose. The IRS federal income tax is made only to pay for the interest on loans given by the Federal Reserve and that the loans that it basically gives the U.S. government. And so basically private bankers give our government money, and then in order to cover the interest on those loans, like a third of your income every year is taken by the government. And it doesn't go to Social Security. It doesn't go to roads. It doesn't go to CHIP, which is child health care. It goes to paying private families' interests. Literally interest on money, not just interest. And like...
Well, shoot, I get paid credit card late fees. You're like, what the fuck? Just because I forget. Because
Sure.
they don't send... They don't send reminders.
Which the thing is, the interest, late fees and interest on a credit card, I think is you're liable for because you signed up for it.
No, for sure.
But the interest on I didn't co-sign us taking money out so we could buy weapons from Boeing to fight a war I didn't agree to from a Federal Reserve that we were told is made by the government. It's actually by families.
Right.
Anyways, I'm getting off from the religious talk. That's the third act of the movie. The second act of the movie is about how.
This talks about the age of Aquarius, doesn't it?
It does. So you've seen this?
Yes. No. My first
my bad.
hallucinogenic experience is like strongly tied to the Zeitgeist.
Interesting.
Movie.
You watched
There's multiple Zeitgeist movies, right?
So they made 3.
Yeah, I watched it when it was still on YouTube when you could just like
They
watch
have
a
them all
couple.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it still on there?
They have them on Amazon too.
It's definitely an interesting watch. What I loved most about it was because I think about astrology. I have CoStar on my phone, and the tie that we just started. Like not even a year or two ago, the age of Aquarius, right? It just happened.
It happened again. I haven't followed.
It was like
Zodiac symbol.
2020. I'm pretty sure it's like the eons or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
We were in the age of Pisces, which was the age of like Christ.
Right.
And they talk about in the movie
you're
it being like
absolutely
2022 or 2023 or something like that.
Yes.
But
yes.
the movie Hair talks about the dawning of the age of Aquarius from the 70s, iconically.
Yeah.
And then, like, it's true. We've truly moved on to, I believe, like a feminine zeitgeist.
It is between Me Too and then the co-option of feminine energy by non-females.
Right.
I mean that in strict sense of like men being more just like effeminate and the concept of non-binary.
Emotional intelligence. A product almost now.
Therapy.
Yeah. I'm not saying it in a bad light whatsoever.
No, not at all.
And clearly it's something natural that we may have no control over.
No.
But that was the most interesting part of the movie to me because I think whether you break down astrology as like hocus pocus, but there might be just some like statistical science. Like a baby born in June.
Yeah.
Let's say the average child takes its first steps like 8 months into its life.
Sure.
I don't know the actual number. But let's just say, what do you think it is?
I think it's about 10 months.
10 months.
Yeah.
So June means you start walking in April.
Okay.
Like the first time you stand up in the world and have your first like interactions on your 2 feet are happening at that time of the year. And every time of the year has something different. Like say you're at Christmas, like the first time you're probably walking around if you're an American standard family, like You were born in February, 10 months, December. It's like Christmas time. Your whole family was around. You're probably like a more communal person just from being around. Like those small little impacts.
Interesting.
Right. Because children are so impressionable.
Oh, yeah. Just like how the energy given to a child before it can even speak will affect how it interacts. How you look at a child even before it can talk will affect how it feels when people look at it for the rest of its life.
Right.
And if you don't look at it, it won't know. It will not know how to read people. Period, because it's never seen faces.
Exactly. And I think like if the first time it was doing that at like 2 months, 3 months old, and it was blistering hot outside during the summer, like that child probably has a completely different connection or nostalgia about the way it connects with people, as it opposed to like cradled in a mother's arms in a cot when it's negative 30 degrees and you're like I don't think you can say Eskimo anymore, but Eskimo child. You know what I mean?
Inuit.
We're talking.
Or indigenous Arctic,
Right.
Eskimo, whatever.
Right. Hey, the people that are cold. Have good.
Well, I could say Eskimo kisses. Sue me. Cancel me.
I think the original PETA villain.
But to your point, I think Zodiac stuff is real, and this is I'm someone who called bullshit on it for so long. Like, my girlfriend's parents are Indian. They were matched by a matchmaker. And, like, so many cultures.
And that's part of their religion or just culture?
Culture.
Okay.
They're Christians, which is a minority religion in India. It's majority Hindu and then Muslim.
Right.
And then Buddhist and then Christianity. But, like, all of the cultures of India. And there's, like, 7 recognized languages in India that are national languages, and that's just like English, there's Hindi, there's Tamil, there's so many, Malayalam, like all of these, and all of the cultures agree on matchmaking. And they agree that like using the zodiac signs is one of the major parts of matchmaking. That's how her parents were matched, was by zodiac signs.
Traditional like 12 ones that like the whole world is?
The whole world recognizes that there are 12 months.
Right.
And there are 12 astrological signs, and those affect demeanor, the way you, just like how you interact with the world as a person.
Right.
And that should influence how you should be matched with your life partner, the person you go through life with.
Interesting.
Yeah. And like, I think that they're all like Greek or Roman signs, and yet people from India are using them. And then also it's like, a girl with self-diagnosed BPD, even though she doesn't have it in Ohio, is like, I have this app that tells me I can't date a Sagittarius.
That's literally what I was about to say. I was about to say that would be such an interesting person to talk to, as opposed to some white lady with dreads that's like, you're an Aries with a Pisces moon. Like, I want to hear what someone who like literally lives their life matchmaking people based on their astrological position.
Right.
Like, that would be crazy.
Yeah, because it's so flippant and like nonsensical, and it's so uninformed in most of the world, and yet in the eastern part of the world it's like just a matter of fact. There's actually like some logic behind it, and like that's what with Zeitgeist, it's like it's not it came out in 2007, and at that time like every douchebag, Michael Moore, who I respect, but, like, I think, his views on God are kind of dumb. Bill Maher, who I do respect, but I don't like him. I think Ricky Gervais, another person I respect, but I would never want to hang out with. All of them were like, all these filmmakers were like, yeah, those are people who I would never hang out with. God, could you imagine? That's like a suicidal dinner, is Bill Maher and Ricky Gervais. And who's more atheist? And, like, they all wanted to, like, they're all about, like, trying to disprove higher power. And yet this one documentary that logically is on the left, or like,
did you like the movie The Invention of Lying?
I thought it was okay. I watched it in the waiting room of an ER, so I was a little preoccupied.
I didn't know Ricky Gervais was like I didn't know he was up there with like Bill Maher in that term, and like
he has a special about atheism, just like Bill Maher, and like I think that Zeitgeist doesn't disprove the whole section is called "The Greatest Story Ever Told." It's not about how religion is fake. It's about how Christianity is actually just a grab bag of other religions. That's what like the point of Zeitgeist is like they're not saying there is no God. Or at least that's how I've watched it 3 times. I didn't take it as that way. It's more of like, hey, there for some reason every society on earth like truly the Persians, the Sumerians, the Israelites, the Babylonians, like the Egyptians, all of them are focused around first one that could be found is in the Greeks, the Romans, everybody is Horus, the sun god. He's the son of Ra, I believe, and that he died, was born of a Virgin Mary, died for 3 days, and rose again. And he brings the light.
It's all the same story.
And it's over and over
just
and
Christianity
over.
was the first person to first people to like turn spiritualism into something purely profitable and organized and digestible in one book.
Right.
Like, hey, we're going to sell it to you in one book, monthly payments. It's a subscription base. You don't have to worry about like growing other people's vegetables.
You can cancel it any time.
You can cancel it any time, but you will go to fucking hell. You will not be entertained if you cancel this subscription.
Which is why I'm still a Lutheran. It was the first sect of Christianity to say you don't buy your way into heaven.
Right.
You can cancel at any time. And
took the digestibility and ran with it. You're like, yeah, this is it.
I mean, our sect of Lutheranism, too, is also seen as, like, the bastardized faith because, like, we rejected the Missouri Synod by saying women can be pastors. Gay, lesbian, and trans people can be pastors. They
ELCA
can be
or
evangelicals, which we are.
Right.
Evangelical Lutheran Church of America. It's, like, seen as the flower child, hippy-dippy, progressive, like, takes too many leaps and reaches with the faith.
Yeah.
But, like, Lutheranism, it's so hilarious that a Lutheran would say that, even though we're the Protestants, people who protested against what was the status quo.
Yeah.
And the Catholicism, the Catholic Church, that's the craziest part of the Zeitgeist documentary, is that they point out that all of this was just made by the Council of Nicaea, the Nicene Creed that we all recite every single day. The Lutherans.
Remind me again. If you got me started, I could probably do it. I don't remember. But we did the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, and then we did the Lord's Prayer every single time.
That's why we don't do the Nicene Creed. We do the Apostles' Creed.
Okay.
It's different. So ours ends with, so I believe in the Father, the Holy Ghost. Basically, you basically say that like the tenets that you do believe that there is 3 in 1, Holy Trinity, a ghost, a God, and a Messiah. And this is the Messiah specifically. And he died, he came back, he rose 3 days later to forgive us, and he will come back and judge the living and the dead. Right. It like lays out the apocalypse.
Very, very plain. Yeah.
It's very plain. And then also for
all of my youth instructors were extreme. Now that you mentioned it, like they were very, very like hippy dippy. Like being Lutheran growing up, like I still like I'm friends with all of them on Facebook. Still, they probably watch this.
A lot of them are.
I don't think many of them even attend the church anymore. And I'm talking like older members of the church. I'm sure some of their families still do, but I went briefly at the end of the pandemic. Before I moved down here, and it was just like, gosh, when I went back, you just saw like spiritualism is slowly dying in America because we found the new way to make it for profit. It's like hot yoga now, but
right,
it's just strange. I was like, how can I make this happen? Because I got a lot out of it.
So much.
I found out about Johnny Cash because of one of my youth leaders. And then I sang Folsom Prison Blues at a church spaghetti luncheon. And then it got to the part where we mentioned like shot a man in Reno just to watch him die, and like it clicked in my head right then. I think I had like a little bit of like my third eye like blinked open for a second. I was like, "You're singing about shooting a man dead at a church spaghetti luncheon,"
and they're cool with it.
And they were just like, "Yeah,"
because they're saying a fellow brother in the Lutheran faith,
a fellow protester of the Catholic Church.
But that's what's so. But you say, why is it hippy dippy?
Right.
Because it formed in the '60s. Did you know that?
Lutheranism formed?
No, ELCA. They rejected.
That makes complete sense because my church
Lutheran
looked
church.
like it was built in like 72, dude.
That's when my church was built, mid 70s.
Yeah, that
I'm dead serious.
I'm serious. I think St. Andrews.
It started in the Midwest, where all the Lutherans, because they're all Scandinavians, and the ELCA is now recognized, not the Missouri Synod, but our sect is the official church of Sweden, which is why my parents, my mom at least, she's Swedish American. If you go to any church, or any town in Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota, Wisconsin, actually not Wisconsin because they have their own synod. There's a Wisconsin synod, a Missouri synod, but if you go to Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, basically where there's Norwegians and Swedish descent, it's not Finns for some reason. They're typically like Unitarians, which is almost the same thing. Some differences, but they'll have a German Catholic church for the German immigrants, and then there's going to be a Missouri Synod of Lutherans who couldn't understand the idea of being Lutheran enough, and then there's evangelicals who just got it.
It's interesting because it's a what's the words I'm looking for? It's like you're layering in a thought, an idea with a religion.
Yes.
Which is, I think, why my parents moved us over, because I think we were Presbyterian. And my parents switched back to the Lutheran church when something about paying for me to be, it was very, very tight.
They also, sorry.
No, you're fine.
They also believe in predetermination.
Who?
Presbyterians.
As in like a fate?
So you are born as Phillip Garcia, and when you die, everything that happened in your entire life from birth to death was planned out by God. You didn't have a choice. You just did it. You thought you had a choice, but you don't.
I kind of feel that way sometimes, though.
I think that I believe, maybe it's because I was programmed to think this way, but I've been, my faith, you can't, if you still believe in any version of the religion that you were born in, if you're a Hindu and you still believe in an amalgamated version of Hinduism in your 20s in America, with internet, with everything going on, that means that you weren't programmed to think that way. That means your faith has been questioned so many times and that you've chosen to have the version of your head that you believe. It's not like living in the 1940s or the 1800s where like there is no outside influences to question your faith.
Right.
You can't avoid it now.
Right.
And so if you still have it,
I disprove it more than I prove it in my mind more than often.
I find that it's not the same version that I believed as a kid, but it's still a newer version exists, and it's still rooted in basics of the Apostle Creed. But I believe that one of the things that really stuck with me with the evangelical Lutheran faith is that it's not the predetermined life that Presbyterians, fellow Protestants, believe. It's the it's the GPS is the easiest way I can describe it to people who don't know what it is. It's God gave you a destiny before death, and you have this pre-planned route like a Presbyterian, but you do have free will to get off of the route. Now, God is going to try to reroute you just like any GPS back on there, but you can choose to never get back on the path and die and possibly go to hell as a result.
Right.
So you do have free will, but there is a predestiny for you.
And what do you feel like they're, like you just said, predestiny?
You're
speaking in terms of Presbyterianism or your own.
This is my own personal faith. Like
Right.
this is the Evangelical Lutheran Church as it was explained to me, and that is one of the few reasons why I can still believe in it, because I do believe. Because if you hear A Glitch in the Matrix, another documentary that's really great, questions simulation theory.
We've talked about this before. I think on your old podcast.
Yeah, dude.
The Glitch in the Matrix is a phenomenal documentary on Hulu.
It's for everyone who goes, there is no God. It's a predetermined like simulation. It's like, well, you're saying the same thing. You're just choosing different nouns.
Yeah, we talked about, I think specifically the guy who took the airplane and started doing like a commercial like JetBlue. Yeah. Started doing loop-de-loops in like above the Cayman Islands or whatever, and just hijacked it off the runway of an airport. Didn't like take any passengers or anybody with them, but then just crashed into the ground, and like the ground control was talking to him, and they're like, so you look like you know what you're kind of doing up there. Are you a pilot? Do you have a license? And he's like, no, I've played video games before. Like, it's all kind of just the same, which is fucking terrifying. Like, that's the part that gave me chills in the entire documentary, especially everything else. But just like, you're right. Like, I was thinking, and I'm putting myself behind a Grand Theft Auto fucking controller, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's a little difficult, but I could probably get it to go a couple loop-de-loops and then crash it into the ground. I think we all could. If you've played Red Dead Redemption, you'd probably figure out how to make that. Or any flight simulator. That's weird.
You have to.
I don't know how I'm tying this back into God.
No. I think it also comes with a personal constitution of belief in yourself that you can do it.
Right. I think that's talent.
I think it's talent. It's natural talent, but it's also confidence.
No, I think talent is the ability. Like, I guess what you just said, but like talent is the ability just to be like,
to be confident.
I can't do it. To be confident. Yeah.
You know, one thing that like.
You ever talk to a really good guitarist and they let you learn something from him? And one time I was tripping with a really good guitarist.
Sure.
And he wasn't tripping. And he was teaching me Actually, he's a comic. His name is Yonder. You've probably met him. He's a great guy. He's a door guy over at Vulcan. And he's teaching me some D formations. And he's like, open D down to D. He's like, and you can play literally any pentatonic scale on top of that. And I was like, yeah, but how do you know where to go? And the way he said it to me, he was like, man, you just fucking like Boomhauer. I was like, man, you just fucking, put on fingers on the fucking fretboard and play it. Like,
with the dang old fretboard.
Right. You want the sound to go higher, you make the note go higher. Like, he just like literally that. And then he said it, and then it just clicked, bro. And it was like, was that talent? Or was that just like a lot? It's like I've spoken Spanish when I've been hammered drunk before pretty freely. Yeah. And like people have been like, you speak Spanish? I'm like, no, but I guess I just felt the confidence to let my brain think that way. Oh, man. Because I know Spanish. I took 6-7 years of it in school.
But to have that inhibition lowered, you were able to just confidently believe in your ability to speak it, even if the grammar wasn't right, even if the pronunciation and the accent. Right. You knew the words. Well, that's
the equivalent to like parents throwing boulders off of children. It's like me getting drunk and speaking Spanish.
Two things. I am always fascinated with head injuries that result in someone learning a skill or that they didn't priorly know.
Like Sam Kinison does the Preacher to comic, or
well, I mean, but there's like so many documented like incidences of like a woman who like gets in a car crash and then now she knows Portuguese.
Out of thin air.
Out of thin air.
Nah, yes. Like you're talking just like it was like unlocked. Yep. Man, she had to have heard it or something before.
Maybe she probably heard it. I guarantee you, she probably heard it like in a restaurant or on TV. But like no one in the house spoke it. She didn't take a class, not formally educated.
Man, this is usually why I have my laptop so I can pull this shit up. But that's fucking insane.
There's other.
That's a glitch in the Matrix.
That's a glitch in the Matrix.
Was that covered in that documentary by chance?
I don't know, but I've heard it on other podcasts.
Right.
Rogan, and I've also like
the podcast.
I've had a concussion, and like I remember talking to. I had to go through cognitive rehab at one point, and because I couldn't drive a car, I was passing out behind the wheel. I couldn't like do basic tasks because I kept passing out. And
narcolepsy or
just exhaustion. Like your brain is so swollen that basic tasks become difficult. You can't remember things in short term for a while. Right. At least in my case. It depends, obviously, on the person and also the degree of head injury. But they were telling me about the neuropsychiatrist was telling me about incidences where people do temporarily or sometimes permanently learn a skill from head injury. And they don't know why. Other thing...
And temporarily as in that the skill goes away?
Sometimes.
After the hill.
So, for instance, that woman who learned Portuguese might forget it one day, just like she never learned it.
Wow.
Other thing.
Write a couple books, I guess, in Portugal. Did you have anything with the bull?
I had a thing. Oh, well, we'll get to that. But one thing. So we talked about the guy who like was able to. He got into he just got his hands on a Boeing 737 commercial airliner, and then was doing true spins. I think it was over like Seattle suburbs like Everett, Washington. Maybe it was Cayman Islands. I don't know. But he was doing barrel rolls.
Somewhere, yeah.
He was doing front flips and he was doing barrel rolls.
Yeah.
And
complicated moves. That's what they were calling them all over the intercom. Remember that?
And that, as a 9/11 truther, that upsets me because I've watched the new Pearl Harbor twice, which is the definitive.
Wait, the one with Ben Affleck?
No, it's the one with Massimo Maxuelli, or the Italian aerospace engineer. If anyone has a day on their hands, watch 9/11, the new Pearl Harbor. It's on YouTube. It's free. An Italian aerospace engineer named Massimo Maxuelli, I think his last name is. He decided as an Italian aerospace engineer, he's like, that's not. He watched the planes and all three incidents. He goes, that's not how planes behave. So then he built a commission of engineers from unbiased countries: Canada, France, Italy, I believe Argentina, and they were like, these are people who worked on planes. They work on drones. These are private and commercial and military pilots, and they all made a commission to look at the magazine Popular Mechanics because the powers that be, the Republican Party, or probably both parties, if we're being honest here.
Dick Cheney mostly.
Whoever planned 9/11 then reached out to the popular magazine Popular Mechanics, which is an engineering and like jerk off Lockheed Martin magazine. And they were like, we want you guys to disprove and debunk all of this 9/11 conspiracy theorists because Loose Change had come out and just shook the narrative.
Loose change. Oh, yeah. Okay.
And so Pod mechanics went to work and did their bidding and came up with all these theories about why 9/11 conspiracy theories are bullshit, and they debunked all of them. And then this Italian aerospace engineer was like, read it cover to cover and goes, there's so many fallacies in this. I'm going to make this unbiased commission of foreign engineers, pilots, everything, and we're going to debunk the debunkers. And they spend 6 hours breaking down every
And they said
single...
the plane weren't even real.
So the planes that took off were real.
Yeah.
But the plane that landed into the Pentagon was most like a missile that had a tail and wings welded to the sides.
Huh.
Because, and they'll explain why in the documentary. And then
yeah.
in Pennsylvania,
Well, of course.
that crash, there was no remnants of any plane when it landed into the ground, which is insane. So instead, they believe it was just probably C4 dynamite.
Like
There's no shrapnel. There's literally no shrapnel. There was just
no metal.
There was literally just blown up ground and earth. There was no plane.
Nothing. No metal
remnants,
at all.
None.
Not a seatbelt.
Nope. Impossible. There has to be something. There wasn't. And then when you
Wow.
I
didn't know that.
Yeah. And so when you look at the
Imagine the voice acting gig for the phone calls.
So the phone calls is what's most interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because this is where
You like how I just went straight to voice acting? I didn't even like, what about the phone call? I was just like, that was a nice gig.
So the phone call part. The phone call part.
Yeah.
People were able to call out. And so they did these tests. They got the phones out of every brand. Nextel, Nokia, Motorola, all the phone makers that made phones in 2001. And they took them to the altitude that I believe is 30,000 feet in the air that a commercial airliner would be at. And they tried to make calls, unable to make calls.
Right.
Those phones did not have the power and bandwidth to reach a cell tower.
You can't make a call until you're like the landing gear's essentially down on the plane.
When you're like 10,000 and lower.
Right.
And so
you have to be next to an area that has extremely well service even at that. So
they didn't even have 4G.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Even flying into DFW Airport now, you would have to get like essentially to the gate. The plane lands and then you have service.
Yeah. And so those calls were done on land. Those planes were not in the air when they said they would be. When you track the schedule of when this planes allegedly flew, they called when the plane would be 30,000 feet in the air. Those calls were impossible, so they had to be on the ground. Those planes were in any airports.
Right.
So.
And Pearl Harbor is a conspiracy too?
Yeah, we'll get to that. We got plenty of time, brother.
Yeah, we do.
So so my parents and family in my life, my brother, who were like calling bullshit on this, they said, well, what's the logic? The documentary explains these planes were probably taken to a black site, probably FBI or CIA. And then they were forced, these people
all
on
of the planes? Oh, the planes that are registered as the crashing planes. Yeah, got you.
And the ones that made the calls. Only 2 of them had calls out of the 3. And these people were put at gunpoint and said, call your loved ones and say you're being hijacked, and we'll let you live. And then they killed them because the people were nowhere to be found, right? The remnants of these people were nowhere to be found.
Oh, fuck.
They didn't put them in witness protection.
Are we going to go missing? Go ahead, sorry.
And I remember my brother, who's in the military, I don't want to implicate him too much, said, are you meaning to tell me that the U.S. government
kidnapped and killed
a plane full of its own citizens to start a new war? And I said, well, they've done more in the past, so yes.
Right.
I mean, we've killed presidents.
For sure.
To start Vietnam. So, like, the idea that we wouldn't just kill people who are substitute teachers,
Delta.
Done. Yeah. They got on there with the Delta rewards.
Were they American? What were the flights?
It was all American, I think, and Delta. Those are the 2 airlines. Like the idea that it would
give me shit for flying Spirit, but you know what?
I mean, it's like, oh, we killed a president. Conspiracy theorists who believe that, they'll be like, oh, but we would never kill someone who flew coach.
Right.
Get the fuck out of here. But here's the thing.
Hey, everyone but first class off the plane. We gotta make some phone calls. That's the.
But long story. We need to get to where I was trying to go to, which is the plane that allegedly flew into the Pentagon was flown by the Saudi citizen. Which, by the way, out of the hijackers, only all but one wasn't Saudi. Which is why did we fight Saudi? Because they helped us, and they were in on it. And this one Saudi is allegedly the one who kidnapped the plane and flew it into the Pentagon at a very low altitude while not losing speed. And that is almost impossible as far as G-force for someone to not pass out except for the most elite pilots. And That's why they believe it was a drone. It was probably an unmanned drone that landed and flew in, or it was an unmanned drone that landed, was hidden, and then a missile got flown in at that speed, hurling into the Pentagon. The idea, and the guy who allegedly flew it, this one Saudi, I can't remember his name, when he went to flight schools in Florida, the flight school failed him because he couldn't land a single-engine Cessna C-130, which is the smallest plane you can fly. So the idea
I've always heard that argument.
He couldn't even operate the most basic of planes. How could he fly a 737 Boeing? And then, so I always believed in that theory. That's why I don't think that Saudi flew it into the Pentagon. But then you watch Glitch in the Matrix where this guy just hops on a plane and is doing barrel rolls. I'm like, fuck.
It also makes sense that they...
Maybe the Saudi didn't do it.
The Saudi, well, they say that all the pilots got their fake IDs from A&M University. You know that, right?
I didn't know that.
Which is one of the, I mean,
it's where HW's library is.
It's where HW library is, and also it is a military affiliate college.
Absolutely,
right. It has a core. So, but
too stupid to get into West Point. Go to A&M.
It would have been too obvious if they did West Point. You couldn't have gotten fake IDs from West Point, but they had to pick some type of subsidized military university. I'm just like thickening the plot for you, but also. Okay, so how?
So that complicates my 9/11 true thing because someone can just get behind a 737 and fucking fly it with no experience.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm saying. So if we believe in the Everett Washington flyer from Glitch in the Matrix, why can't I believe in the Saudi doing it in the Pentagon?
Well,
and I'm someone who's always questioned the Pentagon.
We can also say that. Well, you don't have to be completely debunked there because that guy could have had a whole thing where he played flight emulator. Clearly, he worked at an airport. I mean, maybe he had some type of interest in aeronaut. And apparently Microsoft Flight Simulator is pretty damn accurate.
Yeah.
But yeah, how did he manage to take that? I mean, but if he had used Flight Emulator, he would have known how to put the plane into auto mode where it takes off by itself and the planes land themselves too.
I think all the planes were taken to a CIA black site. The 2 of the 3 planes were forced to make phone calls. Everyone got dead, incinerated.
What about the planes that fly into? How does? So you're saying that all chopped up footage of the Twin Towers, or did those planes hit?
I think those were drones.
Really?
Based on and I don't think that because even if it was a 737 commercial flight plane flying into the middle of the tower, it flew up at about 60% of the height of the towers. I don't remember how many stories, but for the explosion to come from the bottom, which is where the explosions came from, it's documented by witnesses, it's documented by first responders who wouldn't lie, it's documented by the actual forensics of the building.
Subways,
right. So there was actual explosives that went off the same seconds after the planes flew into the towers in the bottom.
So what does that mean about Building 7?
It means that even if a plane flew into it, which I don't think it did, that the tower couldn't have exploded by the plane alone. Right. So I don't think that they would even bother with the plane. I think that if there's any of them that had a plane, I do believe it was Tower 7. I think those were drones. I think that the Pentagon was a drone flown around D.C. because they did fly around D.C.
Right.
They actually got close to the White House.
It's also very clearly, just like looking at that footage every time, it's scary. It always gives me chills to watch the plane hit the building. But what is always unsettling to me, it doesn't sit right with me every time. The way the buildings fall so uniformly. In such a chaotic attack, there's no way it would have just been like just a perfect ground zero. Like, it's a demolition. They fall straight down.
It is a demolition job, and the photos of the people jumping. Mm-hmm. I can never not look at them and feel fucked up. And there's one audio call of this one man on the street calling and saying, "Oh my God, there's a plane! There's a plane! No, 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 no!" And then he like just probably dies from the explosion or choking from the toxins and smoke released from the explosives on the ground.
Right. That's a thing. Like how the people that lived there in that city at that time
all got cancer and died, and some of them just died that minute from lack of oxygen.
Maybe something was planted inside of it, or also just the general flak from it being a building falling in the middle of Manhattan.
Sure. I'm so glad I made this a fun, happy podcast.
No, dude, this is like I said, this motherfucker be reading shit.
These are all just documentaries. If you want to talk about something I've read, I can.
Well, I'm more interested in Pearl Harbor because, believe it or not, I've heard all of the conspiracies, but I felt like But I didn't know Pearl Harbor was thought to have been planned. I didn't know that at all.
I don't.
But
no, sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, it completely matches with the shoe of, hey, we're America and we want to try to find a way to wiggle our 2 cents into this war stat.
So what? As far as like planned
like
wars,
Manhattan, right? Too, or what is it? What was it called that we said Germany sunk for World War One?
that was the Lufthansa. No. The
You're close.
It was an
Lufthansa.
Lufthansa. That was that was like a commercial cruise line.
Right.
That was taken out by
U-boats.
U-boats.
1,000 Americans dead, or whatever they said. That was like the headlines.
World War One and 9/11 were both planned by the U.S. government. So was the Spanish-American War. We parked boats along Cuba, blew them up intentionally, and blamed them. Also, the Mexican-American War.
Yeah.
We had Polk. President Polk brought American troops to provoke the Mexican army for like months and months and months and months, and eventually they were able to provoke them to enough where one fired at them at the U.S. Army, and then they had justification to go in there and say that they were the aggressor. From what I understand about World War II, and I obviously there's so many people who know more of this about me than me, but I don't think that one was actually officially orchestrated by the U.S. Army. I think that they knew about it and then they didn't act on it so that they could. That's so slightly different.
Right.
So you can debate.
But that's even tougher. 1 second. Let me just check to make sure that we're still recording video. But
Yeah.
that's tougher to say because it's almost like
to know about it and then allow it.
Yeah, but also in a flash second, like to make the decision, it doesn't make it. It kind of destroys the entire idea of a conspiracy in a weird way because it's like, who thought out the benefit to? Because in a conspiracy, it feels like there's always a benefit for a deeper state, right?
Sure. I mean, there was incentives for us to enter World War II. You know, to establish American hegemony. After World War I, there was still question of who was the true empire on the planet because England still had colonies in Africa and they had colonies in Asia. They still had colonies in Argentina.
Do you think Holocaust numbers were inflated?
I don't. That's one number where I mean, you can argue that there's the logic behind them.
Right.
But the numbers allegedly come from the ledgers from the Germans, not like the Jews that were being Holocausted.
Right.
So I mean, if you're being Holocausted and you're not being fed but one meal a day, that's half a meal. I don't think you'd have access to great numbers. But I don't know. I think that those numbers are accurate as far as the amount of Jews, gypsies, homosexuals, autistics, people who were all killed. But
oh yeah.
But
I mean, if I started to think to have that same mindset, I think a lot of my friends would go missing.
But the question of the justification of forming Israel, that was done. That was a Saudi, Jewish, European delegate and British agreement. That was a collaboration for the Brits to establish influence where oil was known to be, and to establish power in the most powerful biblical place on earth.
Just imagine some 1940s American businessman hey, didn't they say something about didn't they the Jerusalem? Where's Jerusalem at? And they're like, yeah, oh perfect. We need a military alliance over there.
Yeah,
because that's what I mean. Israel is our strongest military alliance in that area of the world. No.
Well, yes and no. I think that
so it caused such an issue
as far as
we've brushed over a lot of big, not us specifically, but I mean, it feels like the Israel-Palestine thing was never resolved, as far as I'm concerned. Still
not, but it's meant to never be resolved.
Right.
It's better if it isn't for people in power.
Right, and then Ukraine was only in the news cycle for 2 weeks. It's still kind of happening, but it's just for the most part, it seems like the general care is not there anymore.
Well, what upset me the most is the narrative that the reason why Putin is doing this is because he hates NATO. The man formally asked to join NATO twice. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that until very recently.
I didn't know that at all.
I didn't know that until very recently. I was rewatching a documentary about Putin that came out like 3 or 4 years ago, done by Frontline by PBS, and they were going over the rift between Putin and the Obama administration, and the rift between Putin and the Bush W administration, and how basically those two administrations kind of put him in a tough spot, and then Trump, of all people, was an olive branch that actually made relationships better between Russo and American, relationships, and things have.
Strange that, those two enjoyed each other so much. Trump also kind of patched things over with North Korea. That's like the one thing I remember being like, oh, but he did do that. I don't know how that went down, but it did feel like at one point when I was in college, North Korea was doing its thing that it usually does every like 6 or 7 years.
They flex.
Yeah, just threw them like, we are running out of food again. And then
Iran does the same thing. They run out of food, so they just pump up the nukes.
Yeah,
you can argue that's why they don't have food.
Really,
they're putting all the money in the nukes, but
it's
really coming from the world starving them.
Right. Russia, I wonder how they're doing, their day-to-day life has changed in Russia now that we've put all those sanctions on them. It's got to suck to be.
It's brutal. It's inhumane.
There's videos of people still going to McDonald's over there.
If you look at but it's only been
a month,
6 weeks at most.
Yeah.
Check back by the end of the summer and see how they're doing, because I imagine that it's going to be not as bad as Venezuela, which our sanctions on them have malnourished and deformed a generation of people. Like, we'll never know. Because we'll never know. We'll never go in and check out on them. But like
who?
Venezuela.
Are we talking about right now?
Our sanctions on them, they have no Band-Aids, they have no bananas, they have no bread, they have nothing.
They have no currency.
And Iran is also really starved out by us. And you can always, I don't even want to look at like, these sanctions don't do what we think they'll do. I don't know what, what I don't like is like, you have often the war hawk, which is not just strictly related to Republicans, because you have the Clintons who are war hawkish. Most Democrats voted for the war on terror.
Yeah.
So you have it's really just centrist, center left, center right war hawks who argue that we need to go in there, we need to drone strike like Obama, or we need to go boots on the ground like W. And there's this new generation of fringe left, which is progressive leftist, and you can say socialist, and then you have the fringe right, which is often like libertarian, and they're the ones who say we don't need to do real warfare, drones, boots on the ground. Instead, we need to hit them in their pocketbook, and we need to starve the citizens to where they'll uprise and they'll take over power.
At the end of the day, it's everything, cream, cash rules everything around me.
It's still warfare that's just as inhumane, and I don't like how
you heard Elon do that interview recently where he was like, if I wanted anybody dead, you could just have 300 drones swarm a building with basically eliminating the process of error, all tied with a little small explosive, so that if 299 of them get taken down, which is impossible, one still gets to that person.
Right.
Like, one can blow up the door, and the next one can go through that door. Like, it's literally, you can't stop what he was talking about.
Right.
So if I wanted to program that, it could happen right now. So it's like, that being said, anybody could die if we were still fighting a battle of good and evil. It's literally just a matter of what's going to, it feels like, create the most economic stimulation or economic purpose.
Right.
It's really weird. Like you just said, there is a new war to fight now. My biggest fear as an American citizen that's never been involved with any type of military, my family's it's been a generation since we've had military involvement.
Sure.
Is but still watching the news and being kind of knowledgeable, is the idea of a power grid strike from a hacking country, which is Russia and China. And then how much we would I'm more scared of the Americans next door with the power going out for 3 days than I am of a foreign invasion being possible.
Not a bad fear.
Could you imagine if you're driving, the power goes out, right? Like some type of EMP type shit.
Sure.
Your phone's still charged, but it's got 13%, and you're using your GPS to get home. You get there and you realize, like, you see all your neighbors outside, and they're like, "What's going on?" There's nothing. I'm talking like they could shut down the entire country's power if they wanted to.
One thing
We would be fucked.
The one thing that I really am disgusted by is our neighbors.
I thought you were gonna say air fryers.
No, but they are. I don't have an opinion. I've never used one. Are they good?
You'd be fucked in an EMP situation.
Well, the one thing I hate to get like too just down on our own people, but like
Right.
during the blizzard of February 21, you really just saw like disgust. Like I just saw like the most disgusting behavior by
Here?
like because you had people like freeze to death in our society, and we wouldn't let them into any shelter because of COVID, or what's what we said. And then,
Wow.
and look how it happened. And then we had heating stations. I don't know how much good those actually do. But like one thing I kept hearing a lot, because I do work at a really nice restaurant. It's expensive. It's like typically like,
Same here.
yeah, it's $28 a head. That's not nothing. I mean,
Right.
An average party of two is walking out of there with a bill of $60.
Yeah.
That's not really, really expensive, but it's not cheap. And for a casual every single day place, you have to be rich to eat there 5 days a week. And I have regulars who eat there 5-6 days a week, so they have a lot of money. And all of them said the same thing. Oh, I like let my neighbors take a shower because I had electricity, or like we went to like the old folks' home and we'll let them stay at our house. We take care of our own. They kept saying we take care of our own, or I saw it on social media like and it's like. You live in a society where you're forced to take care of your own, and it's because you celebrate your own personal altruism because you don't want to actually live in a society where you are taxed properly, where your money doesn't go to rich bankers. It actually goes to a government where that money's redistributed, where we have proper shelters, we have proper disaster relief, and we have proper reserves of food and an ability to distribute it in a blizzard. We have enough money for our societies of all cities, not just cities in the north, to have snowplows. All the arguments of why the grid failed, like we live in you don't want to actually buy into a socialist construct. Instead, you'd rather look for a neoliberal, I'm good, y'all figure it out, and I'll only take care of the people I choose to, but then have the nerve to say, we look out for our own. It's like either you want to live in the neoliberal look out for yourself system, or you want to live in the socialist one. I don't know which one's better, but I just hate the bullshit, we look out for our own, when you actually don't. That's a lie that's propagated specifically in Texas that bothers me.
It's a weird balance, the balance between that's right. For me, it's a ball on like a...
Sorry, I went on a total
bar,
rant.
like it rolls, but it's always gonna roll a little bit longer that way, even when you switch it. So like it's rolling with the momentum. The ball rolls left. You're like, this is getting too far. You turn right. It's always gonna go up a little bit more before it starts to come down, just because of the momentum.
Yeah,
and it's like like you're saying, neoliberalism, like the new wave is just like it's. I don't know. I don't know what I am. I'm happy to be an American, that's for sure.
Oh, God, there's worse places to be.
For sure. But, like, you do look at countries that are properly taxed, and they're like, oh, everyone goes to college.
Not even. Yeah. Some of them just become apprentices, and they don't go to formal college. They just are welders, and they have a home.
HVAC.
They own a house just like the guy who went to college.
Right. And they still have arts and freedoms, and they have liberal ideals, and, like, oh... Well, I don't know. I've never seen any good Swedish comics.
Here's the thing. If you want to live in a society that's better than America, you're not. You sacrifice humor.
Right.
Because humor comes from
tragedy,
inequality.
Yeah.
First of all, that then leads to destitute situations like drug abuse, like alcohol abuse, or alcohol
cutting in the line at Subway.
It comes from
I'm late for work.
It comes from murder.
Yeah.
It comes from all the dark things.
Murder.
Oh man.
Hey, back with murder, everybody.
Which, side note,
that's what this is about.
I hate being a douchebag who says the word neoliberalism. That word's been ruined because it is an actual thing, but you have so many people in Austin who are our age who blame neoliberalism for the reason why they have a dog shit personality. They're like, late capitalism, the reason why I can't keep a relationship.
I think tech is one of the most... Tech workers make Austin